Hi everyone, this is Superintendent Jim Morse. To my right is Rachael Blansett, who has been hired as our new ORCSD DEIJ coordinator. She has been introduced to you in writing by me. She has been introduced to you in writing by the students, and we thought we would take a different approach and introduce her to you via video. So, let's start our conversation with Rachael. Rachael, give us a sense of who you are and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up right outside of Detroit, Michigan, to a single mother, one brother. I am the first child in my family, which I think has a lot of responsibility on top of being a first-generation college student. So it was really emphasized within my home to value academics and value education. And so I ended up being the first person in my family to go to college, to not only get my bachelor's, but also my master's degree. And throughout that work, I've been doing DEIJ work since I started my undergraduate career, whether that's working with cultural and identity centers, supporting marginalized students, facilitating trainings and dialogues. And throughout my professional career, I've only been able to kind of hone in on those skills a bit more and grow within that work.
Thank you, Rachael. So Rachael went through a comprehensive interview process. She applied for the position. There were 16 people who finished their application, 6 of whom were chosen to be interviewed. The interview committee was made up of parents and community members, teachers and students, as well as administrators. She ended up going through 2 rounds of interviews, one with the DEIJ committee representatives, then another with the community a week later, and also the various staff throughout the district. She came through that process as the recommended #1 candidate, so I spent approximately 6 hours with her over 2 meetings, just getting to know her and checking her references. Her references were stellar. So Rachael, as we move to this next phase where you're an employee, can you speak more deeply about the work you've done? You mentioned it earlier, DEIJ, and how that would apply to a K-12 setting.
Absolutely. So throughout my academic and professional career, I've been able to, as I said, facilitate different dialogues around various social justice topics, lead trainings and professional development for faculty, staff, and students. I've also been able to teach classes, and I've been able to work with community organizations in terms of doing DEIJ work, among a myriad of other things. And so within that, although my background has been predominantly within higher education, I've been making efforts to really pivot into K-12 work and more community-centered work because it's always been really important to me. And so currently I'm working with a Maine school district within their anti-racism task force, alongside creating trainings and professional development for their faculty and staff. So within that, I'm hoping to not only bring a fresh perspective and new skills to Oyster River, but I'm also hoping to continue to learn how to grow within DEIJ work within this role. So, yeah.
Thank you. The job was created because we recognized in Oyster River that there were gaps in our curriculum, that we didn't really know how to address age-appropriate programming for our students, and the DEIJ coordinator position was really created to help our teaching staff in providing professional development and closing those gaps in our curriculum, helping our marginalized populations, whether those populations were based on poverty or sexuality or religious differences or gender identity or color. And so this position was really created to support our teaching staff. And Rachael, you produced some podcasts that have caught our district population's attention. Can you talk to us about when they were created and what their intent was? I know that part of what's caused our community's attention is the language specifically that can come across as coarse and vulgar. Would you address those?
Yeah, so definitely the concerns are valid, and I'm happy to address the question. Just to give a little context, the podcast was created by me and my best friend. And it was after we were graduating graduate school and embarking on our professional journey in our careers. And it not only served as a way for us to maintain relationship and connection with one another, but I think the other piece was that we really wanted to provide a space and a platform to talk about the racialized experiences that we had as Black women within academia and within life and within our profession. And so we've been really trying to use it as a platform to raise awareness and hold different dialogues and discussions around these different topics that impact the Black community, but specifically Black women. And so speaking from our own lived experiences, but also inviting different guests and different folks within our own networks to engage in this dialogue to learn more. With any form of media and content, it's not for everyone, and I think folks should, listen or engage with their own discernment at this time.
I think the biggest concern that I'm hearing, Rachael, is that you would bring that kind of language or those types of podcasts into the school district. Can you address that?
No, absolutely not. And at this time, as I said, this was a personal and creative outlet. And at this time, we started the podcast back in grad school, and that's no longer where we're at. So from here on out, we will not be doing the podcast anymore.
In the issue of reappropriation of language, I think that some of this was a misunderstanding, especially when it came to the picture of you and your t-shirt. Can you talk about the movement of reappropriating language?
Absolutely. So in terms of reappropriating language or reclaiming terms, we look at it from, historically a lot of terms have been used to either shame or certain communities or certain folks that identify in certain ways, and has been used historically as derogatory in nature. And so reappropriating language is a way for those communities and those folks that identify in those ways to really reclaim those languages or that language or term for their own empowerment, and to really reframe the narrative around their identity. So an example of that could be queerness, right? And thinking about how historically the term queer was used to identify as you're different or you're weird, so very used in shaming, derogatory ways. And now we see within the LGBTQIA plus community that a lot of folks are actually reclaiming that term for themselves to use it as a term of validating their experience.
Let's go back to the public school setting, Rachael. So, Oyster River is one of 4 school systems in the state, Exeter and Manchester and Phillips Exeter Academy, that have DEIJ coordinators. And tell me about how you would build a network for this work in our school system.
Absolutely. I think, and this is one of the things that I emphasized throughout my interview process, but building relationships and community and networks within the community is really important to me. And I think through that and building relationships, we can effectively do DEIJ work. But also within that, we can think through public forums, we can think through small group dialogues and discussions together. I'm already thinking about cultivating resources to help teachers within the classroom support their students while doing DEIJ work. So there's a myriad of different ways that we can really embed this within the school district and how we support the community within this work. And I'm hoping to be able to do that through the relationships that I build with folks.
So this is intended to be a brief introduction to Rachael. Rachael, what thoughts do you want to share with the greater Oyster River community in terms of your coming on as our DEIJ coordinator on August 1st?
Absolutely. I mean, number one, I'm really excited, and I'm really hoping that folks are just as excited to engage with this work as much as I am, and really hoping to, as I said, build those relationships, that community, those connections, because without all of us really investing within this work, it's not going to be as effective to get done. So I'm really hoping to do this work with you all.
So this brief video is really just to introduce you to Rachael and let her share with all of you what her qualifications are and major goals for the job. And we look forward to having additional conversations with Rachael as we work together over the coming school year. Thank you.